Have you ever stared at a problem in your business? Maybe it's your messaging, your offer, why the hell your marketing isn't working, and thought, I should be able to figure this out on my own. So you twist and you turn, you try different strategies, trying this guru's advice, then that expert's framework, and somehow you end up more confused than when you started. Well, here's what's missing. Without understanding the fundamentals of how your business actually works, you keep scrambling around hoping something clicks while your confidence erodes and your impact just you stay stuck. So here's an interesting thought for you. Solving problems in your business is a lot like solving a Rubik's Cube. Intrigued on how that works? We're going to dive into that in just a moment. Ready to break free from the solopreneur struggle? Join me as I peel back the layers to a thriving online business without the guru hype or the burnout. I'm going to show you the proven strategies and tools that I use so you can build a sustainable digital business without sacrificing your well-being. Welcome to Ease and Impact, thriving as a solopreneur. I'm really glad you're here because this is your weekly dose of practical advice for the solo business journey wherever you're at. And today I want to share something that's kind of been consuming my brain for the past week, and I promise it has everything to do with your business. My son won a Rubik's Cube at an arcade while we were on holiday, and I've become completely obsessed with solving it. And as I've gone through this process, I realized it mirrors exactly what happens when we're building a business. And what I hope by the end of this conversation is you're going to see your business challenges a little bit differently. You'll understand why some strategies work for others but not for you, why trying something once and moving on keeps you stuck, and most importantly, why learning fundamentals, not just copying people's tactics, is actually what creates sustainable growth. Hopefully, this is the shift that helps you stop second-guessing every decision and start building with confidence. So here's what happened. My son brings home this Rubik's Cube, and naturally, I'm like, I can figure this out. I'm pretty stubborn. And I spent time twisting it around, trying different combinations, convinced if I just played with it enough, I'd crack it. Does that sound familiar at all? Because I think that's how most of us start our business. We think, I'm smart, I'm capable, I can figure this out. And you know what? You absolutely are smart and capable. But here's the thing. Just like the Rubik's Cube, business has mechanics and fundamentals that aren't immediately obvious. You weren't taught these skills. Nobody handed you a manual when you decided to go solo. So after getting pretty much nowhere on my own, I did what we all do. I sought out a tutorial. I found a video and a handout and followed it step by step. It took me about 30 minutes, but I solved it. Victory, right? Except I hadn't actually learned anything. The teacher showed me what to do, but not why it worked. I didn't understand the fundamentals of how the cube actually operates. So when something went slightly wrong, when a piece wasn't where it was supposed to be, I had no idea how to fix it. I just had to start completely over. And I think this is what happens in business all the time. You take a free course or follow a framework, implement someone's proven system, and it works for a minute until something in your business shifts, until your audience changes, or your platform algorithm updates, or your offer evolves. And suddenly, you're stuck again because you were following steps, not understanding principles. So I went back, I found another tutorial. Now, this one was talking about things like nick loss and righty algorithm and soon. And honestly, it didn't make 100% sense as I was doing it. But I kept my mind open. I stayed with the process. I diligently learned what I needed to know, even when it felt weird or confusing. At first, it was taking me about 20 minutes to solve the cube. And I often screwed up that final layer and had to start completely over. But here's where it's gotten interesting, is just after about a week of practice, I got my time down to just 2.5 minutes. 2 minutes and 29.65 seconds to be exact. And a really fascinating part is that final layer, when you're solving it, it literally looks like you're messing everything up. The colors get scrambled. Pieces go into what seems like the wrong position. And every instinct in your body is screaming, stop, you're ruining it. But if you trust the algorithm, if you trust in the process, it actually works out perfectly. Now, let me say that again because this is important. It looks like you're screwing it up. But if you trust the process, it works out perfectly. How many times have you been in your business implementing a strategy that feels wrong or uncomfortable and you've bailed before it had a chance to work? You post content for 2 weeks and don't see results, so you assume it's not working. You send a few emails and get crickets, so you decide email marketing is dead. You raise your prices and the first person says no, so you drop them back down. You try something once, say it didn't work, and you try something else. Or worse, you just give up entirely. But here's what I learned with the Rubik's Cube. The more I practiced, the more I understood the fundamentals. Now, when something doesn't go exactly right, I can figure it out myself. I don't need to watch the tutorial again. I understand why the algorithms work, so I can adapt. That's what happens when you work with a great coach or mentor. They don't just give you the steps, they teach you the fundamentals. They help you understand how your business actually works so you can solve problems yourself, so you don't stay dependent on them forever. A good coach should teach you in a way that eventually you don't need them anymore, or at least you don't need them for that particular level. You graduate to the next challenge with a new guide. But here's the piece that I think is most critical. Trusting the process when you've been operating from a place of fear. For a while there, every time I started that final layer of the cube, I had to literally talk to myself. You're not screwing it up, trust the process. You're not screwing it up, trust the process. Because my brain was screaming at me that I was making it worse. And isn't that what fear does in our business? You're implementing a strategy that an expert told you works, but it feels uncomfortable. It doesn't look like what everyone else is doing. The initial results look messy. So fear whispers, see, this isn't working. You're making it worse. Stop now before you embarrass yourself, before you waste more time, before you lose more money. But what if, just like that final layer of the Rubik's Cube, what looks like chaos is actually a necessary step before a breakthrough? What if the strategy that feels most uncomfortable is exactly the one that's going to reorganize everything into alignment? I'm not saying every strategy will work if you just stick with it longer. In business, we're dealing with people's emotions, not a mathematical equation. But what I am saying is when you understand fundamentals, when you're learning from someone who's teaching you principles, not just tactics, you need to give it enough time and practice to actually see results. And also understand how you can adapt it to your specific situation. You wouldn't expect to solve a Rubik's Cube in 2.5 minutes on your first try. So why do we expect our businesses to transform overnight? The gurus out there, they want you to believe that there's a magic tool, a secret tactic, a special manifesting ritual that's going to change everything instantly. And when it doesn't, you feel like you failed, like you're not good enough, like maybe you're just not cut out for this. But the reality is simpler and also harder. You need to learn the fundamentals, practice them consistently, and trust the process even when it looks messy. You've probably heard me say this before, but I believe your business is an ecosystem with you at the center. But you're not alone. You can get help, and you should get help. But make sure that help is teaching you how to think, not just what to do. Because here's what I know after being obsessed with this little cube for the last week. The satisfaction of solving it myself, of understanding how it works, of watching my time improve because I put in the practice, can't compare that to just following steps without comprehension. The same is true in your business. When you understand the fundamentals, your unique value, your ideal client, your messaging, your business model, that's when you can become unstoppable. Not because everything goes perfectly, but because when something goes sideways, you can solve it yourself. You stop panicking every time something doesn't work as planned. You stop jumping from strategy to strategy. You stop questioning whether you're cut out for it. You just solve the problem, adjust, and you keep going. That's what creates lasting success without sacrificing your well-being. And that's what lets you build that impact with ease, which is what we focus on in this podcast. So here's what I want you to think about. Where in your business are you trying to solve the Rubik's Cube without understanding the fundamentals? Where are you following tactics without principles? And where might you be stopping right before the breakthrough because it looks messy? If you've got thoughts on this, or if you're facing a business challenge that feels like a bit of a scrambled Rubik's Cube right now, drop your questions and comments down below. I read every single one. Thank you so much for listening, and just keep creating that impact with ease.